Welcome to another episode of Leadership Lessons. Our guest today is David Walls. Our topic is understanding church sales tax in Kentucky. David, thank you for joining Leadership Lessons, by the way.
Todd, good to be with you, brother.
Yeah. So let me tell you about David. David Walls is the executive director of the Family Foundation, which is a nonprofit that advocates for God-honoring public policy and biblical values in Kentucky. He is a longtime leader in the areas of religious liberty, pro-life advocacy, and family policy, previously serving with Texas Values and First Liberty Institute. David and his wife, Lindsay, live in Lexington with their 3 children and are members of Porter Memorial Baptist Church. So, David, I'm grateful for you and the friendship that we enjoy and partnership that we've had over some of these issues. So let's just jump into this issue. But first, tell us a little bit about your role with the Family Foundation. What do you do?
Yeah, I'm blessed to lead this organization. Took over for our founder and former executive director, Ken Ostrander. It's hard to believe, coming up on five years later this year. But for 36 years, the Family Foundation has stood for Kentucky families and the biblical values that make them strong. We're the state's Family Policy Council. We're actually a state Christian public policy organization, but we're allied with about 40 other state-based Christian public policy organizations that, in some form or fashion, kind of trace our lineage back to focus on the family and Dr.
Okay.
Dobson. And so, but here in the Commonwealth of Kentucky, we educate and advocate, work with the church, encourage Christians to be salt and light. And then we do have a team that is committed to being up at the Capitol as much as possible during the legislative session and seeking to encourage our legislators to enact God-honoring policy. We know that when the Lord is honored in the laws and policies of our state, it's a blessing for all people. And so we're certainly doing that this session and hopeful that there's going to be some good bills passed this session, including, Lord willing, the one that we're going to be talking about today.
David, you do good work. Your team does good work. I love the young attorney that you have on your team, and whenever he speaks, you know you're about to get educated on something.
Yes.
But your leadership and your spirit, the way you go at it, is impressive. It's encouraging. You're in an untenable position of hearing from angry voters, constituents, even folks like me on occasion, and yet interacting with lawmakers who are balancing a lot of different things, and you're trying to be understanding of both, and that's not an easy needle to thread, and I'm grateful for the way that you do it. So let's talk about this effort to make sure that churches are exempted from having to collect the state sales tax on some transactions. So I'm thinking that many churches are not even aware that they need to collect sales tax. Explain how that happened, that churches are now being taxed, and when churches are responsible for the sales tax.
Yeah, Todd, it's got somewhat of a convoluted and multi-part history as we've kind of come to understand and recognize this issue. And I just have to say from the start, we really became aware of this issue because of churches and pastors who were simply just wanting to do the ministry that they were led to do.
Right.
And so a lot of this came to light after 2022, when the General Assembly passed some important bills dealing with reducing the state income tax. And then as a part of that, they raised the sales tax and tried to make the sales tax more consistent on a number of different items. But one of those items was recreational services, which includes sports leagues and so forth. And so that's really what got the attention of some churches and pastors that we are in contact with on a regular basis, as it relates to things like Upward Basketball and so forth. And it seemed that this was requiring churches that are doing these types of ministries to actually have to register with the state to collect a sales tax. And so
Okay.
there was some confusion about this. Some pastors reached out to us. I've got to mention our brother John Razor,
Yep.
who's a SBC pastor and works with us full time as our church outreach and grassroots coordinator. He found out about this issue, really took the bull by the horn, did some due diligence. We had some conversations with the finance cabinet and some others, and we indeed found out that churches need to be registering to collect this sales tax. And again, this is different than we're not talking about our ability to get exemptions from purchasing items, sales
Right.
tax exemptions that a lot of folks. This is talking about having to register to collect the sales tax if you're participating in one of these sports recreational ministries. And then, Todd, as we came to find out in other conversations that we had, this actually even goes deeper than that. And really, it is if you are doing anything and charging a price for that,
Yep.
whether it's a upward basketball registration, whether that's a, um, a dinner or a fellowship meal on Wednesday nights or other resources that you're selling, if you are doing those things the way the law currently reads, you would be required to register and to start collecting sales and use tax. And so obviously that raised a lot of concerns about just the entanglement of church and state. And look, as you know, as a Southern Baptist myself, we understand the really important distinctions and the proper
Sure.
understanding of those distinctions that we have and that they're important. But even further than that, just kind of the administrative burden and really any hindrance whatsoever
Okay.
that would cause a church to have an extra administrative burden to do ministry, we were really, really concerned about.
Yeah. So great explanation, David, of how we got to where we are. So just to be very, very specific, just so we're clear, types of events that are being taxed. If a church is charging $5 for a Wednesday night meal, then they should be collecting tax on that. Correct?
Yes.
If they're
Yeah,
charging
Todd,
if they're charging $10 for a book that they paid $12 for in the church bookstore, they should be collecting tax and paying tax. If they're charging $15 for a T-shirt that costs knows what for the kids going to camp, they need to collect tax. And if they're charging $150 for the recreational upward basketball or upward soccer, then they should be paying taxes. Am I right on that?
no, you're understanding that right, Todd. And the reality is, in the way it's explained to us, essentially, any of these activities that you just mentioned, and we could probably think of some others as well that churches might do as a part of their ministry. If you are not um, providing that just as a free service, if you're not just saying, "Hey, a suggested donation," if you're actually charging a fee or a price, then you need to be collecting this sales tax, which is highly problematic for a majority of churches. I'll add to this, Todd. There was some changes that were made to up a threshold to like $6,000 if you
Right.
hit that threshold, and,
Yep.
and that may sound like a lot. And we've broken some of this down on some of our resources on our website at KentuckyFamily.org. But it does not take a whole lot of activity for a church to hit that threshold. I was just visiting about a month ago with a pastor at a rural church outside of Lexington. They have an upward league that they actually run more in the upward than they do on Sunday
Hmm.
morning, and they easily exceed that threshold just with the registrations from upward basketball alone. Not to mention other things that they do, including Wednesday night meals. So really, there's a number of concerns on this, and the administrative side. But I think even bigger than that is just the further entanglement of church and state, and any hindrance whatsoever on a church from doing the ministry that God has called them to do.
So let's talk about a couple of those matters. On the administrative challenges, what are the administrative challenges for a church like you're describing? Say they have 70 people on Sunday morning, a volunteer treasurer, they do a Wednesday night dinner, or they buy T-shirts for kids going to camp. They want them all to wear the same T-shirts, or they charge for sports leagues. What are the administrative challenges for that church?
Well, look, we've heard from a lot of smaller rural churches. Todd, you probably know better than I what the numbers are in the
Yep.
KBC, but it's overwhelmingly our smaller rural churches. And the reality is, I didn't go to seminary, but I doubt a lot of folks that have gone to one of our great SBC seminaries took a lot of coursework in accounting
Yep.
and collecting sales and use tax. I'm not saying that folks aren't equipped to do that,
Sure.
but this is certainly a burden on a lot of ministries. Look, we've had conversations with some of the larger churches, and a lot of times some of them have staff. They may already be registered and collecting the sales and use tax for other activities that they've been engaged in, and that's fine and great. Our concern continues to be kind of the average church where you might just have one pastor on staff or a full-time pastor, an associate pastor. And then the question really becomes, what part of the ministry that you are already doing are you going to set aside so that you can tick these boxes to
Yeah.
be in compliance with this state law? And that's the question that's facing a lot of our rural churches. And it's a question that we don't want them to be thinking about.
Yeah, uh, good understanding. Yeah, it's a matter of capacity. It's a matter of, I'm thinking, David, the average church does not have a paid treasurer, a paid accountant on their staff. Some would have someone in that position, but most do not. It is going to fall to a voluntary person who manages the books of the church to collect and submit that. The argument from the legislators would be, well, that you could just make a suggested donation, which, by the way, KET has a suggested donation of $5 a month if you want to receive their streaming services, but you can't get their streaming services unless you give $5 a month. That feels kind of weird to me. And so their answer is to just call it a suggested donation, which, again, that has an odd feel to it if the charge is $5 for the meal. And then that bypasses the tax issue. Or their answer is that, yeah, if you charge $5 for a meal, regardless of whether it costs $7 to prepare it, you should be paying taxes because you're now in competition with the restaurant down the street or the T-shirt place down the street or the YMCA. What's your response to that argument?
Yeah, we've heard some version of that, Todd, a lot over the last couple of years since this issue has, come to the forefront. I'll start with, your first one, which was, well, actually, maybe I'll start with the last one,
Sure.
the competition. Um, the reality is, most churches and ministries that they're doing are not competing against those that are in the private marketplace. I'm not aware of hardly any situation where you have a church that decided to do a Wednesday night fellowship meal because they were seeking to compete against
Goodness.
their local restaurants and so forth. I mean, honestly, if you stop and think about it, it's a pretty ridiculous argument. And honestly, I don't think most business leaders and restaurants in the community would even think about what churches are doing in that manner as well. So I just think we need to reject that argument outright as far as it relates to the competition. And Todd, remind me that the first one you brought up, I wanted
Yeah,
to
so yeah,
address.
the issue of well, they're in competition, or just call it a donation and
Oh,
move
yes,
on.
yes. Yeah. Well, and this is one we've heard a lot too. And look, there are a lot of churches and that we've been in contact with, heard from that already do this.
Hmm.
For Wednesday night meals, have a suggested donation, and that's kind of how they operate. They may have other events, other things that they do as a church and operate that way, and that is completely fine. And if you're doing so, then this tax does not apply. But I've also heard from some saying, well, then churches just need to start doing this altogether. And that's the way that they can get around essentially the requirements of the law. And in having conversations with a lot of pastors, they were concerned just in terms of their conscience and saying, look, we we would like to charge a fee. We're not actually asking for a suggested donation.
Sure.
And so it would be kind of dishonest, disingenuous for us to go down this path. Now, many times they are already kind of operating that way, and
Yep.
obviously, have scholarships available. And if a family's in need, won't, will waive any registration fees. I mean, that kind of thing happens altogether. But again, that reinforces all the more why this tax is kind of ridiculous to be applied to churches to begin with, because again, that's not how most businesses operate, but that is how churches operate. So again, that gets back to the other point to just prove that the churches really aren't in competition with these businesses in the community to begin with.
David, I've heard it said that what the government can tax, the government can control. Is there any sense of apprehension that, boy, this really feels like a government overreach? It feels like the government is reaching its hand into the local church, and it feels like a first step toward the government exercising even more control over a local church would certainly get into religious liberty issue at some point. Any thoughts on that concern?
Oh, no, absolutely. And I think that's a valid concern. I think it was, might have been Chief Justice John Marshall who wrote that the power to tax is the power to destroy. And so this tax structure that we're talking about puts churches, and we're talking about churches right now across the Commonwealth of Kentucky. They're on the hook potentially for significant liabilities that many have no idea that they were required. But when it comes to tax law, claiming you didn't have any idea, claiming
Yep.
you have ignorance of the law is not a defense. And so we've heard some that have said, well, look, the government's not collecting this.
Yep.
They recognize there's not a lot of revenue that's going to come from this. And so it's not really that big of a deal. But I have to, I think we need to step back sometimes. And it's not my desire in bringing this up to go down the political route too far. But let's not remember, it was just a couple years ago that the unthinkable government intrusion
Right.
into the church took place right here in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. We have a governor who's been incredibly hostile to religious liberty. I mean, my goodness, showing up and having state police show
Yep.
up on Easter Sunday to take license plates. I think any of us, a decade ago would have said, oh my goodness, that could never happen in the United States. That certainly could never happen in the Commonwealth of Kentucky, but it did. So I think it's incredibly naive, those that are saying, well, look, this really isn't an issue. We don't foresee this becoming an issue with the government going after any church. The reality is they could. And so because of that, I think we have an obligation, especially if we're a lot of folks that are saying, look, this is not, this isn't some kind of big loss of revenue to the government. For all the more reason why we should look to fix this in this 2026 General Assembly that's going on right now.
All right. To that end, David, a bill has been filed that would solve this problem. Tell us about that bill and who filed it.
Yeah, so House Bill 101 has been filed by Representative James Tipton, and I just have to say we're very thankful for his leadership. So he has filed this bill as well in previous legislative sessions. And this session, a little bit different than the bill that was filed last session. This session, the bill is even more narrowly tailored. It only exempts churches and religious organizations from this sales tax, collecting this sales tax. And so the reality is this will ensure that the revenue impact, if there was any to begin with, is essentially non-existent. And so this bill is picking up momentum. There has already been, I believe that the latest numbers, Todd, are 41 co-sponsors in the House on this bill. And to just kind of, break this down, there are 80 Republicans in the Kentucky House. There's 100 total members.
Yep.
41 is over half of the Republican caucus has already signed on as a co-sponsor to this bill. I have every reason to believe that we're going to pick up some other co-sponsors, including most likely some Democrats as well, who have been supportive and as they have become aware of this issue. And so there's a lot of momentum and support behind House Bill 101. But as we sit right now, we're in the first month of the legislative session. And so it's, I would say, unusual to see a bill that already has this many co-sponsors this early in a legislative session, but we need to keep the pressure up.
So, David, it would obviously pass. If it comes for a vote, there's no question about this bill passing, but someone is keeping this bill from coming for a vote. Tell us a little bit about that process and why something with this much support, it's possible, just like last year, it never sees the light of day for an actual vote.
Yes. So, in the Kentucky General Assembly, leadership in both chambers plays an incredibly important role and gatekeeper, really, of any legislation moving, even legislation that has, incredibly broad support. So we have, unfortunately, we have continued to see leadership in the House that has not been willing into this point to move legislation forward. There's also Representative Jason Petrie, who is kind of head of on the budget side of things in the House, and so he has not, up until this point, been willing to move this bill forward as a standalone bill. And look, I have a lot of tremendous respect for Representative Petrie. He's a
Incredible.
strong
Yeah.
pro-family ally that has done some important work and honestly wears just about as many hats and carries as many burdens in the General Assembly as any member with all that he does on the budget. And so we have tried to the best of our ability to give him the benefit of the doubt and understanding with some of the changes that they've been making, some good changes overall to the tax structure in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. But the reality is, this is a simple fix. There are very serious concerns that we've talked about the religious liberty implications, the impact on church ministries. It's not going to impact church revenue. It's not going to impact any revenue coming into to the Kentucky government. And this bill has been continued to be worked on. It's narrowly tailored. We had heard arguments in previous sessions that there were some concerns that it was too broad and there might be some entities that were not intended to get this exemption to be able to get it. I think that has been cleaned up in House Bill 101 this session. So I really see no reason why this can't be the session to get this important bill across the finish line in some form or fashion.
And David, I think for some of us who are on the outside, I put myself in that category of watching Frankfort, our legislators, our elected leaders, who I pray for, who I respect and care for, value them as human beings, and many of them are brothers and sisters in Christ. I've watched with frustration a lack of effectiveness in dealing with, like, the abortion pill that makes its way into Kentucky, willingness to give us expanded sports gambling in Kentucky, willingness to advance medical marijuana and other issues, and now a willingness to tax churches. It just feels kind of frustrating, I think, for a lot of people, and there's kind of a question mark as to why this is happening. But I really appreciate you laying out the bill. So the messengers at last year's KBC annual meeting unanimously passed a resolution urging lawmakers to act on this issue, and now you're telling us House Bill 101 is the specific way that they would act. What can we do, and what should we do from your standpoint, your recommendation? What should we do to encourage that this bill would make it to the light of day and at least get a chance at being voted on? That's really the issue, is it not?
Yeah, absolutely. And first, I just have to say, Todd, I'm incredibly thankful for you and the work of the KBC that they have done to help shine a light on this issue. I think so many churches and pastors have become aware of this issue because of what y'all have done, whether it be Kentucky Today, whether it be this important and notable resolution that was passed last year on behalf of the largest denomination in Kentucky, calling for this issue to be dealt with this legislative session. Look, I share your frustrations with some of the things that have gotten done in Frankfurt that are bad policy that hurt families, and then some of the good bills that have been neglected. I continue to believe we have had some incredible success, some strong God-honoring policies that have passed in the last several legislative sessions. And sometimes what can happen is that mindset goes, well, we've done these things, these good things, they can take a back burner, and we can work on some of these other issues. But I kind of view it the complete other direction. We're in a cultural battle right now that is just playing out. I mean, he who has eyes, let him see.
Right.
We're debating the very nature of Genesis 1, what it means to be created in the image of God, male and female, the battle over protecting preborn lives. I mean, these are fundamentally important foundational creational order issues that we have to address. And so our view is they need to be prioritized, and they need to be prioritized every single legislative session. And this is one of the issues this session. And so another way that folks can get involved is go to our website at kentuckyfamily.org. We have a Take Action page. We take it to heart to provide an easy channel for you to make your voice heard to your legislators in Frankfurt, because we think it's incredibly important.
Right.
And so we have an action alert on this bill, House Bill 101, and a number of other important pro-life and pro-family issues that literally, with just a click of a button, you can send a message that you can edit and personalize it if you like. but to send it on to your legislators in Frankfurt. We've been blessed over the last couple of sessions to have over 60,000 messages sent to
Wow.
legislators that have helped several important bills get across the finish line. And my hope and prayer is that we'll see that happen on this issue this session.
Yeah, that's outstanding. So do something, get involved, say something, speak up, and don't remain silent on this issue. So, David, I know there are a couple of other bills that you're watching, and I want to give you a couple of minutes to speak to those before I have a couple of final questions for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Todd, you mentioned the important resolution that was passed at the KBC convention earlier this year. One of those other resolutions, in addition to dealing with the church sales tax, was the issue of medical conscience.
Yep.
And so there has already been an important medical conscience bill that completely fits the mold of what was called for in the KBC resolution, and that is Senate Bill 72 by Senator Donald Douglas. This bill would simply just ensure that doctors and all medical professionals are never forced to violate their conscience when recommending treatment options. This is a foundational principle. The right to conscience is spelled out in the Kentucky Constitution. It's foundational to us as Christians and certainly as Southern Baptists. And so this is an issue that has been worked on for several legislative sessions. A similar bill passed the General Assembly last year and got all the way through the process in the House and literally was on the final day, had an opportunity to be voted on, and they didn't pull it up for a vote. Yeah. And so so we're very optimistic that we can get this important bill across the finish line. And again, that is Senate Bill 72 by Senator Donald Douglas.
All right.
One other one I'll mention is House Bill 170 by Representative T.J. Roberts. This is an important bill to strengthen Kentucky's existing Religious Freedom Restoration Act. Todd, I don't have to tell you that our First Amendment religious liberty rights are foundational. They're foundational to all the freedoms that we have as image bearers created in the image of God. And we have some holes and some needs to strengthen our state-based religious liberty protections. And so House Bill 170 by Representative T.J. Roberts would do that. That bill also passed, a version of that bill passed the Senate last session, but didn't get taken up in the House. So I encourage folks to learn more about those issues and others and to make your voice heard this legislative session.
Yeah, great counsel, Dave. Thanks for your update on both of those. And again, our posture is that, man, we're for our elected leaders. We pray for them, support them, vote for them, right? And know that they're in a position that God's given them a unique role to protect religious liberties, to promote human flourishing. I mean, they can actually make law that's either wicked law that hurts humanity or good law that advances the well-being. Sports betting obviously hurts humanity. That's going to prove to be the train wreck that it's already showing up to be. And
what a disaster.
When we reach out with kindness and respect, recognizing the role the Lord's given these leaders, but also recognizing that we have a voice too. They represent us in Frankfurt. And so really appreciate your work. So David, let me ask you a couple of quick leadership questions. You are, again, in the unenviable position of listening to outraged voters who are so angry over some of these issues and just frustrated. And it seems like it just looks so easy to go and make a good law that's good for people. And on the other side, you're talking to elected leaders who are really, in all fairness, trying to balance a lot of different things.
Yeah.
And some have no control over what gets put forward to a vote or not. How do you balance that and with your personality, your care, your concern, your passion on these issues? How do you handle that tension that you're in?
Yeah, I think it's a natural tension, Todd, and it's something that we feel in a lot of areas of our life. And ultimately, and I'm not perfect at this, the Family Foundation hasn't been perfect at this, but we seek to honor Christ in the way that we engage. And so that means we're going to be passionate, we're going to be bold, we're going to stand for truth. And I think we're in a moment where we need to be bold, speaking truth, and bringing our Christian witness into the public square boldly because we love people, we love our neighbor, and that's a way that we can do that. And we certainly honor our elected officials. And I like to say, so many times there are life or death decisions that are being laid at the feet of our legislators. And honestly, they're not equipped to do that. And so many times government is not equipped and was not created for the purpose that they're being asked to address. And many times the church is. And
Yep.
so that's why we want to have pastors and churches engage and honestly form relationships with their legislators so the Lord can open doors to policy discussions and other counsel. Look, my heart would be that every legislator in the General Assembly, one of the first people they think to reach out to for counsel is, hopefully their own pastor, but if
Mhm.
not, pastors in their community
Yep.
with these hard questions that are being asked and laid at the feet of our elected officials. And so, but we need to be bold. We need to be convictional, and we need to recognize that what we're doing is a part of our Christian witness.
Yeah.
Our
Absolutely.
engagement in the culture, our engagement in the political sphere is not a distraction from the gospel.
Yeah.
It is a part of the lived out gospel that we're all called to do as followers of the Lord Jesus Christ.
All right, last question. So, David, you are an organizational leader, and leaders make mistakes. It's not if you're going to mess up, it's when you mess up. So, tell us about a leadership mistake that you have made, what you learned from it, how you recovered from it.
Yeah. I would say most of the leadership mistakes that I have made sometimes is taking on too much
Sure. Yeah.
a lot of times
Yeah.
because there are so many different issues that we can be involved in that I'm passionate about that are within the mission of our organization. And so sometimes, and it happens a lot during the legislative session, where it's like, look at all these good bills. I think we can help,
Yeah.
in so many different ways, and then we end up stretching ourselves thin. I think pastors can
Yep.
recognize this and understand
Sure.
this in the ministry, and so really seeking the Lord and asking His counsel to say, Lord, what are the most important things that you would have
That's
us
a good word.
work on and advocate on this this issue that we've been talking about, the church sales tax, has been one of an important issue for us, but even more so this session. And so I'm just incredibly thankful for the opportunity, even today, to talk about it and raise more awareness of this issue with you.
David, thank you so much. House Bill 101. Call your representative. David, Family Foundation can help you on their website, and we've listed that website in the notes here. Can help you find who to talk to, who to call. And David, I guess the exact language is that if you call, you're going to talk to an operator who's going to take a note, and the note is that we encourage we encourage our elected leaders to bring House Bill 101 to a full vote. Is that the right kind of language?
Yeah, to move it through the process for a full vote, and
Yep.
and we to continue to encourage folks to encourage their legislator to sign on as a co-sponsor. Look,
Yep.
we've already got half the caucus. Let's get that number up, and that will just continue to help build the momentum.
Brother, I appreciate you, your friendship, and your leadership for the Family Foundation, and thank you for joining Leadership Lessons today.
Todd, this has been fun. God bless you.
Yeah, you as well. Thanks for listening to Leadership Lessons. An audio podcast of this program is available on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and more. The Kentucky Baptist Convention was created by churches for churches to help churches reach Kentucky and the world for Christ. For more information about the KBC and the cooperative program which fuels our ministry, go to kybaptist.org. We'll see you next time on Leadership Lessons.